our service of baptism starts on page 299. When we do baptisms here, we very much follow this formula. We've changed some of the wording, but this is pretty much it. So in the body of that comes the service for confirmation and reception, which those of you who are joining the church will be a part of. Okay, and we'll talk about that more later. Next comes the Eucharist. So Eucharist means
Witness.
Thanksgiving.
Yep, both of those. Thanksgiving,
What?
witness.
I missed
Thanksgiving, Eucharist means Thanksgiving. So that is our communion service, or liturgy. So these are the services. The first one in there is a penitential rite. So it's a rite that's often used during Lent. Set up specifically to talk about what we've screwed up in our lives.
Can I go back a teeny bit
Yep.
before we get there?
Yep.
This additional directions page,
Okay?
is that changed with every prayer book? It's on the
Yes.
312.
Yes. Yes, so, and in the 79 prayer book, this changed tremendously, the description of baptism, because that's when we stopped believing that you had to be baptized to be saved or whatever.
Right.
So it was totally rewritten for this prayer book. Yep, totally.
But these apply to different services then?
Yes, so there's additional directions listed after each service.
If it's no longer, if baptism is no longer required to be saved,
Yes.
according to the 79 prayer book,
Yes, yes.
why is it that most, in my understanding, most Episcopal churches require baptism in order to receive communion?
Right, so that is a big discussion in the church now, and it's a really big deal.
Well, maybe.
So if we go back to the first class that we did, you can see how baptism is the entrance into the community for all of us. That baptism is the way that we come into the church, and everything that we do comes out of baptism. So for some Episcopal churches, and I think this makes a lot of sense, going through the process of baptism and being baptized is the only way that you can get to the place where you should be taking part in communion. So there are many churches that's their theology. Here at Grace St. Paul's, I've taken the opposite tact. I believe that Jesus gave communion to everyone, that Jesus fed everyone, that Jesus went out of his way to feed every single person, no matter if they had any faith tradition or awe or anything, and I cannot stray from that. And I was so, I don't want to use that word, I was so influenced by my Roman Catholic upbringing and the fact that the church said that you can't go to communion if you did this, this, and this wrong, or if you haven't been baptized, or if you haven't gone to confession to get rid of. And that is the opposite of the way I understand Jesus. Jesus brought communion, fed everybody. So in this church, we have taken the opposite approach and said, everybody's welcome to the table all the time, and I'd love to talk to you about baptism, but that certainly doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to go to communion. I can make a strong case for either one of those positions, but Jesus wins for me.
Is there an easy way for those of us who are visitors
Yes.
to know how a particular Episcopal church stands on that subject? I usually take it that some of them, they'll say, everyone is welcome to participate,
Yes.
but not all of them
Yes.
do say that.
Yes.
So like I've advised family members, no, they didn't say everyone.
Yeah. Most of the time it's in the bulletin. There's usually a piece at the beginning of the bulletin or at communion that says what kind of church it is. And right now, we're probably at about 75% of the churches that are like us, that invite everyone to communion. Because we've all been quite influenced by our last presiding bishops, especially Edmund Browning, and to have a church where everybody's not invited to something doesn't make much sense to most of us theologically. But again, I can make that case, and there are people that do, so I get it.
Thank you.
Okay? Yep. All right, so we did most of the Eucharist stuff, so I'm going to just skip over the Eucharist there, but you can run through that and see that the whole services are in there. We talked about some of the rubrics, so let's just leave it at that. After that comes prayers of the people. There are 6 forms of prayers of the people in the book, starting on page 383. You will go to many Episcopal churches where they will say to you, prayers of the people today will be Form 2, and they will start reading them out of the book. These prayers were never meant to be the actual prayers. I've spoken to more than a few people who wrote these prayers for the prayer book, and they said, you guys, you don't get it. You're not supposed to do these prayers. This is supposed to be a jumping off point for the community. Everybody's supposed to do their own prayers based on the needs of the community. And that's what we try to do here. But, you also understand there are a lot of people that don't have those kind of sources. So they use them right out of the book, and that's fine. So there they are. Okay? There are collects that follow prayers of the people in the book on page 394. I very rarely use any of them because we write our collects to match the liturgy. So like today, you heard the collect be about, from the Acts of the Apostles, the Acts of the Apostles turning the world upside down. I use that to try to go with the rest of our liturgy. We do our own every week. After that comes pastoral offices, the service for confirmation, which we will do when the bishop comes, and we're going to talk about that next week. Then we have a service for the celebration and blessing of a marriage. Really fun. By the way, the words for our marriage ceremony are the ones that you almost always see in the movies.
Yes.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here. Those are our words. So I'm usually rolling my eyes when the movie. But they almost always use our words because those are the words everybody recognizes. So, and here at Grace St. Paul's, of course, every wedding that we do, I write the liturgy based on the couple, what's going to represent them the best, and who they are. But I never stray from this order of worship. Okay? There's a rite for a blessing of a civil marriage. People are already married, and they want to have that marriage in the church. After that comes an order for marriage, my favorite thing. It says what you have to have in a marriage, and then you can make up the rest yourself. I love that. I made 435. By the way, let me mention at this point that this is the only time that a clergy person that I represent both the church and the state in an act is at a wedding. So we're doing a civil action, and I'm representing the state doing that, and I'm also representing the church. I don't like that. I think it's misguided for a priest to ever be representing the state, and you heard me talk about that a little bit today. But that's the way it is right now, so that's what we do. After that comes a thanksgiving for the birth of a child on page 439. This was a very important liturgy for us in 1979 because if we're telling people that you don't have to get your babies baptized right away, you have to have something for them to do. So this is what we do.
Okay.
But I got to tell you, old habits die hard, and most people want to get their baby baptized right away. So I think we've used this Thanksgiving since I've been here. I don't know, what do you think, Deanna? Maybe 3 times? Not very often. You don't get, and one of them was for an adoption. So anyway, but that was an important deal. Next comes the reconciliation of a penitent on page 447. Believe it or not, we have confession in the Episcopal Church, and this is it. We have private confession, and we're going to talk about that more next week. Okay? Ministration to the sick comes after that, for page 453. A lovely, beautiful liturgy to go when someone is sick. And then after that, ministration at the time of death, sometimes still called last rites. And some of my most wonderful moments in the church have been doing this liturgy with someone as they're dying. Just great stuff, and I don't stray much from this stuff. It's pretty darn good. Yep.
Quick question. If
Yep.
you were called to the bedside of someone who was imminently dying
Yes.
and they were not baptized in any tradition,
Yes.
would you personally and as a priest in the Episcopal Church feel a compulsion to baptize that person real quick before last rites?
I would absolutely feel no compulsion to do that, zero. However, pastorally, if someone comes to me and says that somebody's dying, or especially my baby's dying, come baptize my baby right away, this is no time to be having a theological conversation. I just say yes, and we go, and I do it. Absolutely. But I make those decisions based purely on pastoral situations. If somebody asks for it, I absolutely do it. But I would never say to somebody, don't you want to be baptized first? It makes no sense theologically for us.
Thank you.
Yep. So after that comes our burial rites, rite 1 and rite 2, starting on page 469. Also quite beautiful rites. They're quite lovely. After that comes Episcopal services. They begin with ordination services on page 512. The ordination of a bishop, ordination of a priest, ordination of a deacon. If you've never been to an ordination service, we try very hard here to make them not look like somebody's being crowned king. And we try to bring out the servanthood part of this. But I've been to some ordinations that look more like someone is being crowned. Let's see. Then we have a celebration of new ministry. We will be doing that for Pastor Kimberly coming up here real soon. That'll be really, really fun. So we'll do that service. Next comes the consecration of a church on page 567. So when you first go into a building, a new building that you're going to use for worship, you would use this service. I got to do that up in Page. It's really, really fun. By the way, when you come out of a church, like that, you're not going to use a building for worship anymore. We do have a rite of desacralizing it. Okay, after all that time too. Yep. After that comes the Psalms. So these are the Book of Common Prayer translation of the Psalms, and they're in the book because if you're using just the prayer book for Eucharist, you'll need to read the Psalms, so you have to go in here to be able to get them.
So is this a unique translation, or is it?
It's a unique translation.
It's not like the NEB or something.
It's not any other translation. It's its own translation. Here at Grace St. Paul's, we have also done our own unique translation of the Psalms, which some of you have noticed. By a company of females back before I got here, one of whom was Kari McBride, who is now redacting all of our hymns, fixing all of that language in them. So I'm very grateful to all of them for that. Page 810, prayers and thanksgivings. There are prayers in here for all kinds of situations in life. So I want you to be aware that they're in there. They're really helpful to grab for any special occasion or special need. We use the prayer for birthdays in here in our 745 liturgy. Okay. After that comes an outline of the faith on page 845. These are the catechism questions, and we'll use a couple of these in our next couple of sessions. If you look on page 844, I think the most important thing, so some of you know, that especially those of you who grew up Catholic, that the catechism was a very important part of what the church was about. Our catechism is not like that. Read sentence 2 on page 844. It is a commentary on the creeds, but is not meant to be a complete statement of belief and practice. Rather, it is a point of departure for the teacher. In other words, it's not like the old Baltimore Catechism in the Roman Church, where this is the answer to this question and that's it. For us, this is just a place to start a conversation. Okay. And we are a church of questions, that's what we do. Some of you heard Diana Butler-Bass say that to me Wednesday night when I said, we'll have a question and answer period, and she said, wait a minute, isn't this an Episcopal church? Shouldn't it be questions and questions? Yes. After that comes historical documents of the church. So starting on page 864. These are documents that we want everybody to remember because it helped us get to some place theologically. But you don't have to believe any of this stuff to be in this church. But it's helpful to know where some of our theology came from and all of that history. So they're just in the book for your personal use. After that comes a lovely table for finding the date of Easter Day. My favorite things in the church. It's so fantastic. Easter Day is, as you know, always the Sunday after the full moon that occurs on or after the spring equinox, a date which is fixed in accordance with an ancient ecclesiastical computation and which does not always correspond to the astronomical equinox. The full moon may blah, 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 blah. And then after you give up trying to figure it out like that, they give you a little chart to figure it out.
Full moon, all the loonies come out.
Right.
That's true.
Well, and of course,
It
in
never worked
the
in a
Eastern
hospital.
tradition, Easter is calculated a wholly different way. So, yep. After that comes the lectionary. Totally unhelpful to you now because we use the revised common lectionary in the church now. This was our own lectionary that we came up with. None of us use that anymore. We all use the revised common lectionary. So the idea is if you go to a Methodist or Episcopal or Catholic or Lutheran church, liturgical church, UCC, that we're all preaching on the same lessons. They all have the same lessons each week, which is very cool for me because I get to talk to people from other denominations and we get to talk about this together. So that's kind of nice. Okay. There's also a daily lectionary in here, which is helpful to you. We still use that daily lectionary. There's a list of daily days. It's also in the day-by-day book. If you get that little thing at the welcome table, which is very helpful. Okay, we did the daily lectionary.
There's 3 lectionaries.
I think we did it.
Yay.
Sorry, I'm a little over than. Okay. Good?
Good.